You guys can still see my screen, yeah? Okay, good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So today we're very happy to be here to talk about a Kasten on Google Cloud. So it's a hands-on based workshop. So we will probably talk about the theory about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we will move on to the hands-on section, talk about the details of how actually it works. So my name is Yongkang here. I'm very excited to be here. So I'm actually very passionate about the cloud technologies and also Kubernetes. So that's my focus as well. So here is the agenda for today. So I will first talk about why Google Cloud GKE in general. That's based on my research, my understanding. Yeah, please, for those of you who are not, please mute yourself, okay? Thanks. So I will talk about why Google Cloud GKE. That's based on my research, my understanding. And then I invite Marc from Google to talk about the containers at the Google Cloud, and followed by the rest of the sections all covered by me. Very excited to be here. Yes, you guys probably also noticed I'm 5 times Google Cloud certified. Yeah, join me to learn and get certified. Let's get started. The first section, why Google Cloud GKE. I'm not sure if you guys all aware. So Google Cloud actually, it is a clear leader in terms of the multi-cloud container developer platform. That is based on the Forest Wave research. I don't have a latest update from last year, but that is from Q3 2020. You can see Google is a clear leader together with Red Hat and Rancher. And secondly, if I'm looking at the CNCF survey from last year, basically there are 2 major points here. People don't want to manage their own Kubernetes cluster. So why? It is so hard to manage your own Kubernetes cluster. So second point is how these guys deploy the Kubernetes cluster. They turn to the managed Kubernetes. So Google Kubernetes engine, that's one of the top 3 managed Kubernetes. So look at this ranking. This is by CNCF survey. Google GKE was, in the number 3. I'm actually slightly disagree. So I did my own research based on the LinkedIn survey. Totally 390 votes. 70% vote Google Cloud GKE. Yeah, for those of you, if you are not speaking, please mute yourself. Thank you. And since we are based here in Asia Pacific, if you talk about the number of regions, cloud regions, Google actually is, Google has the most region in Asia Pacific. It is tied with the Azure Cloud. By the way, this is based on the research back to January. I excluding China because Google doesn't operate in China. So here are the 11 regions across Asia Pacific. You can see from North Asia to South Asia to Pacific region. There are totally 11 regions across Asia Pacific, almost everywhere. And last but not least, before I hand it to Marc, so this is from my YouTube channel. So there are top 17 most watched videos. You can see 5 of them are Google Cloud related. So you can see here, so I recorded my first one, that's GKE automation. And the second one followed by how you can stream it to enable the container backup on GKE. And I also did 4 minutes how to create a GKE cluster and how to sign up a GKE Google Cloud trial account. And I also did something like how to migrate from AKS to GKE in just a few minutes. So in general, Google is so popular, and especially the GKE is the market leader. So with that, let me hand it to Marc from Google to share us some more details about the containers at the Google Cloud. Over to you, Marc. Let me make you being able to control. Yeah, might be easier. Yeah, I just give you control. Go from there, Marc.
Oh, hi. Hi, Yongkang. I'm on the web version of Zoom, so I don't.
Not a problem. Let me move to the next slide. Yeah. So
next slide, please.
Can you take control? Looks like you can. Yeah. Could be slowly. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Yeah. But actually, can you help me to go back? I don't seem to be able to go backwards.
Looks like where is my control? Yeah, I need to take back my control. Oh, sorry. Okay, here we go.
All right, just restarting. Yeah. So nice to meet everyone. Marc here, based in Singapore, and I'm with Google Cloud. Been with Google Cloud for over 5.5 years now. Currently run the pre-sale specialist team for Southeast Asia. So looking at all different technologies from containers, Kubernetes, to machine learning, to data analytics and databases. But of course, today, together with our great partner, Veeam and Kasten here, the main topic is around Kubernetes and containers. And I will give you a quick overview of some of the highlights of why Google is the best place to run container workloads, and what some of our customers say about us. So starting with this slide, apologies for the formatting. It seems to have run after we've converted to a PowerPoint. But one of the things about why Google knows working with containerized workloads so well is because even before the invention of Kubernetes, or even before Google open source Kubernetes, probably around 6+ years ago, Google has been running containers in our own data centers on our orchestration called Borg for almost 20 years now, right? So we started using containers in Linux about 19 years ago. So that's a very long, legacy and history working with containers, and it runs through our DNA in all of our consumer products, right? So you use things like Gmail, Google Search, Maps, all of that every day, and all of that runs as containers on our physical infrastructure. And not interestingly enough, even some of our cloud products also run as containers. Even our virtual machines for Compute Engine runs as containers in our Borg orchestration system. And over the years, as Google has released more and more services, right? A lot of these services actually now have started moving from our internal orchestration system natively onto GKE itself, right? So think about some of our machine learning services, for serving ML models in a managed serverless way. In the back end, we actually have Google running, our customers' containers on, dedicated GKE clusters, which are managed by Google. Right? Other services like Airflow or Cloud Composer also run exactly that way, using GKE clusters as the foundation for our higher level services that we sell to our customers, right? That just shows how much we believe in containers being the future of all application workloads, and how important it is Kubernetes is as an orchestration platform for running those workloads. This picture gives you a good sense as to how important things around Kubernetes are, right? In addition to GKE itself. Most of today we'll be talking about GKE and about how we protect workloads on GKE with Kasten, but it's also important to know that all our joint customers are really interested about everything outside GKE, outside Kubernetes, right? So they also want to know what's the best way that they can do containerized development. How do companies, how do engineering teams change the way they do software development, change their local developer inner loops, right? And how can they adapt that to be container based? And then when it comes to actually moving the applications to production, right? What is the most efficient way of setting up CI/CD? Right? Can they do it in a serverless fashion? Can they avoid going down the route of very traditional, running a Jenkins server, having to set up Jenkins workers, managing the capacity of running those build jobs, etc., etc. Right? And of course, Google Cloud has all these services like Cloud Build as well as Cloud Deploy, right? Which are all cloud native and fully integrated to work with GKE for running those production containerized workloads. A quick note around operation as well. Oh, sorry, just stay on that slide for a minute. Operation actually is another area where a lot of our customers, don't want to have to deal with that toil and overhead, right? So they're looking for a platform to run their applications, but they don't want to have to figure out how do they scale up their log aggregation system, how do they scale up their monitoring system, right? It's amazing, how many new customers to Kubernetes actually start to find that their legacy tooling for monitoring, their legacy tooling for logging really just can't keep up with these cloud native applications, right? So it's a little bit like how you need Kasten to take care of data protection for cloud native workloads. Even when you think about operations, you can't take those legacy tools because the containers, the volume of containers, right, that customers end up running on Kubernetes platform is like 10x the number of virtual machines that customers are used to running. So imagine, how much more logs are being generated. Imagine how many more metrics are being generated. And so again, it becomes really important, to have all of this readily available when you're looking to start moving to container-based and Kubernetes-based workloads, right? So you have all these supporting operational infrastructure ready to scale with your applications. Right, let me try. There we go. So when it comes to Kubernetes itself, right, there are a few reasons or a few ways that we can see why Google is still the leader, when it comes to contributing to the community, when it comes to the capabilities that we have in our native offering, which is, GKE, right? The picture speaks 1,000 words, and you can already see when you look at those bar charts, the difference in scale that GKE is able to support as compared to some of our competitors, right? And really the reason behind us being so far ahead, in terms of the maturity of our GKE offering is one, we were the creators and we're still the largest contributor to the open source Kubernetes project. A lot of these core functions of Kubernetes actually still happen within Google Cloud itself. So can you imagine that for the open source Kubernetes project, as they make changes to the Kubernetes code, guess where the unit testing automated pipelines are running? They're actually all just running on Google Cloud, right? And in Kubernetes and on GKE itself. So imagine that we're using GKE to build the future versions of Kubernetes, right? Other than that, the product managers that I work with, right, based in the US or based around the world, many of them are leads of the SIGs or the special interest groups in the open source community, right? So we are there with our customers, with the other core contributors of the Kubernetes project, helping to chart the course, helping to understand where our users' pain points are and where the core Kubernetes project needs to further improve so that everyone can benefit from a better experience, right? And that's really one of the reasons why many customers come to Google Cloud, because of that sort of that natural affinity, the fact that we're in the community, we're still the biggest contributor, and we have that thought leadership when it comes to where this whole project is going. All right, next slide. So if you're not familiar with GKE, just a quick introduction, Google Kubernetes Engine is Google Cloud's managed offering for a Kubernetes platform, right? If you look on the left-hand side, these are some of the types of challenges that a customer would normally have when trying to run a Kubernetes environment. When you instead choose GKE, a lot of this operational overhead goes away, right? So I talked about monitoring before, things like upgrades, scaling up, scaling down of the nodes, ensuring the uptime of the Kubernetes masters, all of that goes away. and it's a lot simpler. Next slide. Wanted to highlight one or two differentiated managed offerings, even with our base standard GKE service, right? So there are other managed Kubernetes service in the market, but of course, again, because we've been in this market longer, we've managed to innovate faster than our competitors, right? So not exactly on the slide, you can read yourself some of the easy capabilities that are natively available with GKE, but some of the more recent ones that we've added. One is around DNS, right? If you have customers that have run Kubernetes at scale, you will know that managing kubedns, right, is one of the trickiest things to do, especially at scale, right? Because again, think about the thousands of containers that are running on the cluster and the number of requests for DNS lookups that each of those containers do every time there's communication, right? So DNS actually is a real key bottleneck, and that's something that Google realized a couple of years back. And what we ended up doing is for GKE, we've moved the DNS service out from inside of the cluster out to a managed service inside Google Cloud, run, operated, monitored by Google, with the highest SLA, right? That's something that you're not going to get at any other provider. And that's something that helps our large scale customers, right, to take away one more of those pain points, one more of those worry points when they have to scale, to thousands of nodes. For example, when they're having a large event for end customers, et cetera, right? Another pretty recent addition that we've added to our GKE standard actually is around GKE security posture. And that's really to cater for those enterprise customers that have all, slowly started to adopt container-based workloads and move to Kubernetes. And one of the first questions that they always end up asking is, how can I run a vulnerability scan against, Kubernetes? How can I, does your Kubernetes comply to, the CIS standards, et cetera, right? And so there are tools out there, third-party tools out there in the market that do this, but now we've built that in natively into GKE. And if you go into the console, you will start to see now in preview a new tab that will show you exactly whether or not your cluster and the workloads, the containers inside, are compliant to all the best practices for running Kubernetes, right? So again, these are things that you're not going to get out of the box with other managed Kubernetes providers. The last thing I wanted to highlight today is, if we go to the next slide, is another flavor of GKE that we have, which has started to get really, really popular with new customers. And that's called GKE Autopilot. And what GKE Autopilot does is two main things. It's really provide a fully managed, think of it as almost serverless experience for Kubernetes, right? Even with GKE, a customer would still need to, think about GKE as a Kubernetes cluster, think about it, in terms of nodes. And then when they pay for the infrastructure, they still pay in terms of the nodes or the virtual machines. GKE Autopilot is putting in, sort of one more layer of abstraction to make Kubernetes as easy as possible for the platform operators or for the developers. With GKE Autopilot, customers no longer see the nodes in the Kubernetes cluster. So you no longer have to think, whether or not your scaling policies are optimal, whether you've got the right number of node pools, etc. All of that's abstracted away. And because that's done, now when it comes to things like billing, we're able to bill our customers at a more granular level. So instead of paying for the virtual machine, our customers would then only need to pay for the containers that they're actually running. And so, as customers get better and better at doing cloud native development, better and better at optimizing their code, so that it reacts quickly to changes in the traffic, right? That means that while using GKE Autopilot, you really start to pay for what you use, right? So again, these are all the kinds of advances that Google continues to invest in and continues to push when it comes to Kubernetes. And you can only expect that we'll continue to invest and innovate in this area. Right, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I will stick around for another 10 minutes, but I'll let Yongkang continue with this wonderful workshop. Thank you, Yongkang.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Awesome.
It's
Thanks,
great
Marc.
to hear. Google Cloud has so many, innovations over the years. Is my voice okay? I can hear some echo. I don't know. Can you guys hear me okay? Let me turn off my camera. Let's see how it goes. Okay, let's continue. So yeah, again, thanks, Mark, for joining us to talk about the Google Cloud. How how much innovation from the last few years adding to the Kubernetes community. And now I'm going to take it from here, talk about why Kasten by Veeam. So Kasten by Veeam, we are the #1 Kubernetes backup DR application mobility software. So why the Kubernetes cluster needs a specialized tool or Kubernetes native tool to back up the workloads running on the Kubernetes cluster as a containers. So majority of the customers today, they are still thinking, I already running the Kubernetes. I already have the legacy backup software. Let's just back up the virtual machine. Let's just do the storage snapshot backup. That is actually not enough. You don't see the visibility into the Kubernetes containers. You don't see what configuration, what resources inside. So in the next few slides, I will give you some more insights on how the #1 Kubernetes backup looks like. So first of all, I'm very proud of being part of Kasten by Veeam. We are actually one of the top 44 members of CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation. We are also the only backup vendor as a platinum or gold member. So Kasten is here together with all different, large Kubernetes vendors. So like, Google Cloud is one of these, and the majority of the big names. So only Kasten is one of the platinum member. So total 44, there is no other backup software vendor, only Kasten by Veeam. So our mission, Kasten mission is more to helping the customers to tackle the day-to-day data management challenges, to make sure the enterprises can run their applications on Kubernetes cluster confidently. 3 major use cases we'll talk about here. So how to have the specialized tool to providing the granular recovery capabilities of your containers, containerized applications. How to reach the portability. The containers running today could be on-premise. Tomorrow I want to move to Google Cloud. Or maybe they want to come back to on-premises. So application mobility is very important. That's the second use case. And the last but not least, the disaster recovery, also very important to meet the regulation requirements to achieve the DR, requirements. How to make that happen? Traditional backup tool doesn't work at all. Talking about the Kubernetes specific data protection market, Gartner, Forest Wave, they don't have such, report. So the only one is from GigaOM. So as you can see from the screen, actually how to read the chart here. So the close to the center cycle, the better. So Kasten is very much close to the center together with a few others. This is the 4th year, 2020, they released the report. So we are the clear leader in the Kubernetes data protection market. So our level of innovation is definitely ahead of any of the competitors. Let's look at last year. So I put together to compare from 2020 to 2021. So Kasten is here, we are still close to the center. We are still the leader, but the rest of the guys actually pushed away from the center. So you can see Kasten, we continue to innovate and we continue to be the leader for the Kubernetes data production. So we were trusted by a lot of large leading enterprises across, globally and across all different industries. So listed here just a few public references. All right, guys, can you guys put yourself on mute? And what makes Kasten the #1 Kubernetes backup? So first of all, we are completely Kubernetes native. We are purpose-built for the Kubernetes backup DR. We are using the cloud native or Kubernetes native technologies. So when you deploy, you actually don't see any, we don't require any actual backup info. So we're just literally running natively inside your Kubernetes cluster. Secondly, we provided end-to-end security. Security is so important to any company. We support role-based access control, OpenID Connect, token-based authentication, IAM integration, and also have the beauty industry, standard encryption. So the third point here is that we have the widest ecosystem integration across the entire stack. You can select the best, tool for your infra. You can choose the best storage, best, Kubernetes distribution for your workloads. You can run any application on top of the Kubernetes cluster. Last but not least, the easy of use. How easy, how simple to use. You basically just one Helm install command, we can deploy it to your Kubernetes cluster. But if you want to deploy it from a Google Cloud or other public cloud, you can do the one click to deploy it from a marketplace. And everything we do from the web console, it's an API call. Everything can be fully automated and it can easily integrate to your CI/CD pipeline. I will talk about a little bit more later. So how Kasten K10 works? So we have the unique application-centric approach here. So when Kasten deployed to your Kubernetes cluster, in this case, it could be GKE, we will talk to the API server. We will discover all of your Kubernetes resource, all these Kubernetes objects. You might have ingress service, port, PVC, your different configurations like config maps or secrets. All of these will be discovered. And then we apply the SLA policy to treat the whole application as an operating unit, to take a snapshot of your application, of your configuration, and your data. Okay, and just to give you some more high-level overview of the K10 architecture. So you might be running Kubernetes, from a virtual or physical infra, and on top of that, you have your container orchestration platform engine. You might have a GKE, you might have a GKE on-prem or GKE multi-cloud, and Kasten here. We are natively running inside your Kubernetes cluster. I mentioned earlier, we don't need a separate backup infra. We talk to the Kubernetes cluster via the API server. We discover all of your applications here, and then we apply the lifecycle policy management to your applications. You might have your lift and shift applications, or maybe cloud native applications. We support all of these. And how we are going to talk to the infrastructure? We simply use the API. So traditionally, initially, customers might use the Inchi storage integration, but moving forward, the whole market moving to the CSI, container storage interface. So you don't need to worry too much. As long as the storage support the CSI driver, you should be able to integrate with Kasten K10. And where's the application? You might have all different applications. You probably notice here all of the application, traditional application like Oracle, DB2, you probably less seen from running inside of the containers. Most likely you will see Cassandra, MongoDB, MySQL, PostgreSQL, Redis, Kafka, etc. All these popular containerized applications running from the containers. And we also have our application framework, or what we call Canister, open source framework. It is allow you to deploy the agentless application-centric hooks. Basically, even your custom application, you can leverage the framework to write your own blueprint to integrate with Kasten K10 to be able to achieve the application consistency backup, database consistency backup, or the overall system level consistency backup. So a little bit more information about the Kasten K10 transformation. That's part of our core architecture, we have two powerful transformation engines here. The number one is data transformation engine. So we have the built-in compression, digitization, encryption, etc. And the other transformation engine, it's application transformation engine. This is very powerful. That makes the life easier when it comes to the application mobility or portability. We have the transformation engine allow you to transform all different Kubernetes objects. So for example, you might want to migrate from on-premise any other Kubernetes distribution to Google Cloud, but apparently you're using different storage. So we have the powerful transformation engine allow you to part of the restore. We will transform the storage to the Google Cloud storage class. And another example is you might want to transform some of the Kubernetes resource or objects. Initially, you might have 5 deployments, let's say 5 replica sets. But when you move to the Google Cloud, you might want to increase to 10 or 20. So part of the restore process will allow to transform these objects. So I give you another example. You might create your application, your persistent volume claims initially only like 10 gigabytes. Now you want to increase to 100 gigabytes when you move to a different cluster. So part of the restore will allow you to transform the objects to increase the size. You might want to add labels. Initially don't have the label. Now you want to restore to the new environment. You want to add the labels. And all of these can be done from our transformation engine. So where the backup stores. So I got a Kubernetes cluster here. I was running all different applications. It could be a SQL database, NoSQL database, and the Kubernetes cluster here. I have all different Kubernetes objects, and I have a storage array to providing the persistent volume claims. So when we do the snapshot, we capture your application metadata, and we also allow you to leverage the database dump tools. It could be MySQL dump, MongoDB dump, or WowG, WowE. All these are supported by us. And we also allow you to capture all these Kubernetes configurations, cluster metadata. And obviously, we also take a snapshot of your persistent volume claims. So shortly in the demo, you will see when we take a snapshot of the Kubernetes application, you will see application, you will see configuration, and you will see the data as well. So obviously, pass to Kasten the transformation engine, data transformation engine, and application transformation engine, we store some metadata to our Kasten K10 metadata catalog, but we also highly recommend customers to always send another copy to the external object storage or NFS storage, or even VBR backup repository also supported. In that case, you can leverage the object storage here. You can leverage the object lock to have the backup immutability to avoid the ransomware attack. And also another situation is your snapshot initially created from the storage array here. So what if somebody accidentally deleted the whole namespace, including the snapshot, all gone? What if the whole data center is gone? You will end up, you can't recover. So that's why we always recommend you send another copy to the external object storage. It could be far away from your data center. It could be from a different region, different country. So that will support your disaster recovery scenarios. So just to share you another slide here, we have the widest ecosystem integration. And I mentioned earlier, we give you choice, freedom to choose any storage in vendor products. And you can deploy any Kubernetes distributions. We support all of these. We also give you the capabilities to migrate from any one of the Kubernetes cluster to the other. And on top of that, you can deploy any one of your familiar Kubernetes applications. And if it's not in the list, we have the Canist open source framework, allow you to customize, to write your own blueprint to integrate with Kasten K10. So with that, let me shift to the next topic, Kasten on Google Cloud, what's supported, what's not. So in general, majority of the environment are supported. Let me go through one by one. So first of all, you're running Google Kubernetes engine, and that's the popular offering from Google Cloud. It is supported. You might just want to build your vanilla Kubernetes cluster running on Google Compute Engine. That is supported as well. And you might run it on OpenShift. It's a very popular Kubernetes cluster, especially on premises. A lot of customers using OpenShift. But they want to move to Google Cloud. They want to build their own OpenShift cluster running on Google Cloud. This is supported. You might want to build a Rancher. That's another popular Kubernetes distribution, RKE on Google Cloud. And VMware Tanzu also have the offerings running on Google Cloud. And HPE actually also have the Ismo container platform. They can be running on Google Cloud. It's a long list, from CNCF, there are totally about 50 certified Kubernetes distributions. So majority of these, as long as it's incompatible with the upstream Kubernetes, we support it. What about the Anthos clusters? It just works based on the Kubernetes, vanilla Kubernetes compatibility. So you might have your Anthos cluster running on VMware. That's what they call GKE on-prem. Or you might have an Anthos multi-cloud, could be running on AWS, could be running on Azure Cloud. It is supported as well. So now let me talk about what's not supported. So the GKE Autopilot, that's a great offering from Google Cloud. But the thing is, everything is fully managed by Google Cloud. We don't see how many work nodes running from the Google Cloud. Right now, we don't have the support. So when we do the licensing, we count how many work nodes they are running. But the charge model from GKE Autopilot is based on the number of pods. So we won't be able to count how many work nodes you guys are running from GKE. So it could be in the future, we're going to depend on the market adoption, but right now we don't support GKE Autopilot. The other offering is the Cloud Run. For those of you who are not aware, Cloud Run is the service offerings from Google Cloud. Since it's running serverless, again, the same thing, we don't see how many work nodes you guys are running. We don't support Cloud Run. So now let me talk about how to deploy Kasten K10 on Google Cloud. I mentioned earlier, it's so easy, so simple. How simple? Just one command, Helm install. We can deploy the latest version 4.5.15 to your GKE cluster. So secondly, if you want to deploy from a Google Cloud Marketplace, you can just search Kasten. You can find the Kasten K10 4.5, the latest version. And for customers, they want to use Terraform to automate the infrastructure as code to automate the whole process. It is doable as well. So with that, let me jump to the demo. I will quickly give you a live demo, and then we'll talk about something new we just announced last week. So I will log into the Google Cloud Web Console here. Let me reconnect. So I log into the console, and I open the Google Cloud shell. It might take a few minutes. In the meantime, let me go to my GitHub page. So if you go to my GitHub page, the GKE-K10, that's the first automation I created. So what it does is it will build a ready-to-use custom demo environment in about 6 minutes. You just run one command. So let me click GKE-K10. So once I click the GKE-K10, you can see the details. Here's the open source code. So I created the scripts and I make it publicly available. So I might just jump to the section here. If you don't have a Google Cloud, yeah, I have a YouTube video to walk you through step by step to create a trial account. So once you have these, you log into the Google Cloud shell. And then you do the git clone. It's a one-time job. And then you do the create a Google Cloud service account. So we need the service account to be able to talk to the cloud. And a part of that, we also enable the GKE API if it wasn't enabled. And you can optionally customize the class name, machine type, etc., but you don't have to. So once you have the preparation tasks done, basically you log into Cloud Shell, you clone the repository, you create the service account, then it depends on your needs. I built 3 different scenarios here. For our case today, we don't have a GKE cluster, you just run the third column here. So basically you run /deploy, we will create a GKE cluster, we will install Kasten K10, we will deploy PostgreSQL database, we will create a GCS profile, and then we will create a backup policy followed by kick off the on-demand backup jobs. So all of this is typically about 6-7 minutes. But if you already have a GKE cluster, you don't have to go through, you don't have to create another one, you just run the K10-deploy. Okay, what I'm going to show you here is, the other one is, the last one is, you just want to create a GKE cluster, you just run GKE-deploy. So we will create an empty, GKE cluster. So let me come back to the Cloud Shell. So before you start, you need to make sure you run this command gcloud configure set the project to your project ID. So my project ID is project for Yongkang, and once you set this, typically you will be asked to authorize. So I'm going to authorize now, and then you will see in your command Cloud Shell, you will see your project ID here. If you don't see your project ID here, don't go next step because it's not going to work. Okay, so now, as I said, this is a one-time job. I already did the clone. I already did the create a service account, so I don't have to do this. So the next step is I can just do a /deploy. We will create everything. But I'm actually already created the GKE cluster, so I just run this command. So K10-deploy. So what we are going to do? No, I need to change to the directory. Okay, GKE-K10. That's the clone repository here, and then I'm going to run the K10-deploy. So by doing this, we actually, let me come back to the slide deck here. So by doing this, what we're doing here is 3 minutes, so we can enable the continuous backup on GKE. Okay, so we will install Kasten K10 first, and then we will deploy a PostgreSQL database. We will create a Google Cloud storage location profile. We will configure backup policy. We will run on-demand backup jobs. All of these in 3 minutes. Typically less than 3 minutes. Sometimes it could be a little bit more. So while we're doing this, I might just walk you through a little bit more here. So in the typical environment, customers, I mentioned earlier, portability, application mobility is very important to the customers. They want to move to the cloud. They might want to move from one cloud to the other cloud. Maybe come back to the on-premise. I give you the example here is, I got an AKS cluster here. I have my SQL database here. I have all these Kubernetes configurations objects here. Kasten K10 was running here as a containers. So how we are going to do the backup? We take a snapshot of your application and your configuration and your data. And we also send another copy to the object storage. So once it's sitting in the object storage, we allow you to easily to import to another cluster. In this case, I got a GKE cluster here, but I don't have the MySQL database here. So how to do the restore migration? We simply do an import and then followed by restore. After the restore, the MySQL database will be up-running from a GKE cluster. So this is how we make life easier when customer, they might want to migrate from on-premise to the cloud, maybe from all different migration scenarios support. And typically customer, they ended up having multiple clusters. You might have on-premises, you have multiple clusters. Every cluster you will have a Kasten K10 deployed. But you don't want to log into every cluster individually to manage your environment. So for example, here, I got one cluster here. I got another cluster from Google, another cluster from Azure Cloud. We can nominate one cluster as a primary. And from there, we can do the centralized monitoring management. You can create the global policy, global location profile, and then distribute it to all of your clusters. And typically, in a full demo environment, I can show you how the multi-cluster management works, how the restore from one cluster to the other works, how we can do the backup of the newly imported database, how we do the backup of the newly restored database, how the full restore in place works, how the restore to a new namespace, or you want to clone to a new namespace works, how the granular restore works. And shortly in the workshop, you will learn majority of the stuff. since we only work on the Google Cloud, so you want to be able to test the AKS to GKE migration, but you can do the full restore in place. You can do the restore to a new namespace. You can do granular restore of the individual spec artifacts. So in a typical customer environment, you might have OpenShift, you might have Amazon EKS, you may running a VMware Tanzu, you may running Rancher, all of these supported. Okay, so by now the cluster should be up running. But let me come back to the slide, to the console. Okay, so by end of the scripts, you are expecting to see, here is your token code. You double click the token code and then click the link to access the web console. And the total time we're spending to create the environment 1 minute 33 seconds. So what we did here that I mentioned earlier, not only we we create a deploy Kasten K10, we also install sample database, we create a backup policy, all of these. So when I click the link, first of all, you will be asked to provide the token code. I paste the token code, click sign in. You will log into the custom web console. First time login, you will be asked to provide the email address and your company name, then click free download now. Once you log in, you can see this is our very easy, simple to use web console. The moment you log in, you already see you already deployed a sample database. It's called Yongkang-PostgreSQL. And we already have one restore points. And you also have one backup policy configured. The backup jobs are already kicked off. Okay, if I click the job details, you can see, oh, actually the job already finished. So you can see the first is the backup job. We are doing the application backup. We are doing the application configuration backup. We are doing the persistent volume claim snapshot. The second job is we're going to copy to the object storage. In this case, I was using Google Cloud Storage. And the third job is about our metadata export. So if I click the job details here, you can see I discovered all of your Kubernetes objects, including your namespace, secrets, configure maps, etc. So we have the visibility into your Kubernetes cluster. When it comes to the restore, that's where we allow it to do the granular individual resource recovery. So shortly in the lab, you can try by yourself. So I'm not going to do the restore to show you how it works or how the backup policy works. It's so simple. I will take you to the lab shortly. So let me come back to the slide deck here. So we already talked about the advanced capabilities here. Not only we're going to support your backup of the containers, we give you the possibility to leverage the public cloud object storage or even on-premise NFS storage or any S3 compatible storage for the extra copy, and also support your disaster recovery scenarios. And we allow you to easily to migrate from one cluster to the other. It can be one-time migration from AKS to GKE, or you might want to use another cloud as a disaster recovery site. So what we can do is we allow you to, this is what we can do. From your source cluster, you can configure the backup or export to the object storage every 5 minutes. And from the target cluster, you can do the import and the restore, basically just one policy. And it will allow us to have the standby DR. So basically from the UI, you can configure minimum that's 5 minutes. So shortly from the lab, you can see, you can try by yourself. So before I move to the next topic, just to highlight today's lab, we're not going to see migration from one cloud to the other, but I want to highlight the steps. It's so simple. From a source cluster, you configure the backup policy, you export to the object storage. And from the target cluster, you configure import policy and then do the restore. And basically, that's what we need to do. So once this is done, the policy will be automatically scheduled based on your settings. It can be one-time job or can be, standby DR, constantly running the backup export from a target cluster, do the import, do the restore. And then the one thing I want to highlight is because from your target cluster, you want to read your source data. That's why we're using the common, bucket here. So you can see it's called K10 migration for Yong. That's the source bucket I was using. And from my target cluster, I'm using the same storage bucket. That's where I can read the data from your source backup. And another thing I want to highlight is we actually, customers can leverage this approach to simplify the upgrade maintenance, because we allow you to move from one version to another version. Maybe you're running today 1.19 or 1.20, but you want to move to a cluster running on 1.22. Typically, customers don't want to do the in-place upgrade. The reason is when you do the in-place upgrade, let's say from 1.18 to 1.22, there are a lot of API changes. Your existing YAML file, your configuration, it was working perfectly for 1.18, but it won't work after you upgrade to 1.22 because there are a lot of API changes. So that's why we take a different approach to help you simplify the upgrade. We simply take a snapshot of your source cluster. You just create this empty 1.22 cluster, and then we do the restore to the new cluster to simplify your upgrade maintenance process. And we can do the reverse way as well. You might say you upgrade to 1.22, you realize that there are some issues, you want to downgrade to 1.20 or 1.21. It is also possible. And not to mention, we allow different Kubernetes distribution. But obviously, in my testing small MySQL database, only 3 minutes, I can migrate from AKS to GKE. So optional, you can migrate back. Yeah, you can migrate from GKE, come back to AKS as well. Okay, I got a few YouTube videos to talk about how the migration works. So that number one is AKS to GKE. The second one is how to migrate from on-premise to ACK. That's Alibaba Cloud. The other one is you want to move from one OpenShift to another OpenShift. So I guess I've done enough talking. Before the lab, I got another topic. This is a very exciting offering. So last week, from the KubeCon Europe event, we just announced the Kasten K10 version 5. So version 5 continue to enable us again becomes the leader. So we have the security anywhere introduced. So being able to leverage the platform hardening, the ease of use, and also leverage the data protection policy guardrail to integrate with Kimoto and also some other softwares. And we're being able to support the ransomware attack detection. That's also very important. So being able to leverage the Veeam hardened Linux repository with immutability. And talking about the shift left, so we are able to integrate with data service blueprints like AWS EKS blueprints, and we have the enhanced Red Hat OpenShift operator, and also simplify the UI for the operations. Last but not least, we continue to enhance our ecosystem support. We're going to give customers to deploy from a Red Hat marketplace. So today, customers also already have the capability to deploy from a Red Hat marketplace, but it was the pay-as-you-go. Basically, still gets the license from us. The enhancement give customer to just purchase from a Red Hat. And the other one is to support the SUSE Rancher marketplace. And last but not least, VMware Tanzu, vSphere for Tanzu offerings, also known as TKGS support. Okay, I might just share a few, key contacts and also resource links. So we will share you the slide deck anyway. So I'm not going to talk too much here. So for Kasten on Google Cloud, if you guys have any opportunities or need any assistance from us, here is a few contacts. And especially talking about Kasten on Google Cloud, I have quite a few links here for you to learn, for you to try by yourself. And if you are, you're interested to try on other public clouds, right now I built the automation to cover all top 5 public cloud. And join us to learn. We have a very good, free training. So after the training, you will collect all the, different Kubernetes badges. It's pretty cool. And you can try for free. You can try our test drive. And the last not least, but not least, if you guys are anyone interested to join me to learn to become a container specialist from the public cloud, or you might want to join me to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also pretty popular. Yeah, not only cover Google Cloud, I also cover other Kubernetes distributions. So let's build the labs. Okay. So what we need to do is you can go to this link. So if I click this link, let me actually come back here. So I'm going to copy the link here. If you go to GCP-lab guide.yongkang.cloud, I will share in the chat window as well. So basically, this is the self-paced lab guide to guide you through how to do these, how to learn, how to launch a GKE cluster, how to configure the backups, how to install application. Yeah, looks like it is running slow. Let me do this. By the way, make sure it's HTTP, okay? It's just a redirection. If you go to HTTPS, it doesn't work. Okay, this is a Kasten K10 test drive on Google Cloud. We're the #1 Kubernetes backup DR mobility. So this is a lab guide. If you follow the lab guide, you should be able to see all of these. Okay, so let me come back to the slide deck here. So when we are going to use these, so you might want to give the customer a demo. You might want to learn by yourself. You might want to give the partners a demo. So you can, anytime you can get access. If you don't have a Google Cloud account, you can sign up a trial account. It only take 5 minutes. So how to do it? Here is my GitHub source code. And you just log into your Google Cloud. You can try by yourself. So in the lab, what we are going to do today is we will run the /deploy. So we will create a GKE cluster followed by all of these steps. And once you have the environment ready, typically in about 6-7 minutes, you can explore all different recovery options. You can do the in-place full restore to a new namespace, individual resource recovery. You can restore from a Google Cloud storage bucket. And I also created additional labs. This is optional, it depends on your time or depends on your interest. So the first one, explore all of these. Because I created all the environment by the automation. So you don't see, you don't learn how it works for the, sorry, let me share you guys the link from the chat window first. Yeah, I just send the link from the chat window. So I built a special section talking about the additional labs. You will learn how to manually deploy MySQL database. You will learn how to manually create a backup policy, how to create a Google Cloud Store location profile, how to run the backups jobs manually, how to do the restore. Okay. And here's a diagram to just highlight what the environment looks like. So we are going to create the GKE cluster, Google Kubernetes engine, in just one region, one zone, one node. So for the costing purposes, I'm not going to create multiple nodes, multiple region. So the moment you create the environment, you will see you have one application running here, Kasten-IO, that's our Kasten containers running here. We are using the persistent disk as well. And we also have the Yong-PostgreSQL that will be part of the automation will be created. The additional labs will create the middle one, the Yong-MySQL. This is manually you can deploy. So once you have these, you can try the backup to restore from the container storage, the yellow arrow here, you can restore from the container storage. Basically, that's a Google persistent disk snapshot. Or you can restore from a Google Cloud storage. I think I've done enough talking. Yeah, I leave you guys to continue the labs. Just to share you a few, popular, commonly used Kubernetes command. So you might want to always, I typically always add the alias. I don't want to every time to type the kube control, the kubectl, that's the command to manage the Kubernetes cluster. So once you have the alias in set, you can run kget-no to check the port status, node status, to check the namespace, to check the port status, etc. The last two lines is about the how to check the Kasten logs. It's optional for you. I think that's all for now. Yet I want to leave you guys to work on the labs. Feel free to ask me if you have any questions. You can ask in the chat window, or you can unmute yourself. Just ask. If you hit any issues, just let me know. I will give you the control. You can share the screen. I will make sure you guys by end of the session, you guys do have the hands-on experiences on Google Cloud GKE and also on the container backup restore. Okay, let me check if any questions from the chat window. No, looks like no questions from here. So basically,
hi, Yongkang. Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
The question is, when I restore the application, I find in the Kubernetes, I found volume snapshot content with the restore size equals 0. I have no idea what it means.
Unless the size is so small, yeah. Let me take a look. Let me give you control. So if you don't mind, share your screens. We can start from there. Yeah.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Yeah, if you guys want to, you might take a screenshot of the commonly used commands. If you're not familiar, if you are already quite familiar with Kubernetes, you probably already know all of these. So yeah, that's
sorry, I can't share my screen. Yeah.
Give me 1 second, okay?
Okay.
That's basically pretty much all I want to cover for today, and I will stop the recording, and then I will give you the permission to share your screen. Okay.